When I shared the 5 stages of burnout over on my TikTok, I got over 2 million views. It takes on average 1 to 3 years to recover from burnout, and most people need to take 3.5 months off work sick, but some people need up to a year. The thing about burnout is that prevention is better than cure, but the slippery slope into burnout is a difficult one because it's really tricky to know if it's happening to you and to take action to stop yourself from ending up in a burnout crisis. Let's talk about the 5 stages of burnout so that you can identify where you're at. Keep watching to the end because I'm also going to share a burnout quiz with you as well. So for those of you that don't know me, I am Dr. Claire Ashley. I am a GP. I have over 20 years of clinical experience. I have a background in neuroscience. I'm also an NHS clinical entrepreneur. My specialist interest is mental well-being and burnout in particular. I unfortunately have lived experience of burnout, so I've been there. I have been in a very, very desperate place, and it has taken me years to get over it as well. Happily though, I know exactly what it takes to recover, which is why I'm here on my social media channels sharing everything I've learned with you so that you don't have to go through the same thing. However, if you do identify with being burnt out, then don't panic. Yes, the recovery period is long. For me, it took kind of 4 years really to totally get over burnout. But I'm going to be sharing everything I know about recovery on here and also over on my TikTok too. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through the 5 stages to burnout now, and these are 5 common stages that have been identified in pretty much everyone that ends up in a burnout crisis. You don't necessarily have to go through each step sequentially in order to end up in burnout, but I think it's helpful to know that there is a recognized process. In terms of the origins of the 5 stages of burnout, they were originally a 12-step process into burnout, but that model was then simplified. And I think 5 steps is much easier to identify and to work with. So one thing that you'll need to be aware of the 5 stages of burnout is that you probably won't realize or recognize what's happening until quite late in the process. What's really key about these stages as well is that the people around you, so your friends and your family, will notice that you're burnt out before you will. This is all part of the process and it's totally normal. Okay. Stage 1 is the honeymoon period. So this stage is called the honeymoon phase because it is characterized by enthusiasm for your work. This typically occurs when you start a new role, but it can happen at any particular point in your job, regardless of whether or not you are in a new job or not. In this stage, there are absolutely no signs of burnout. So you are full of energy, enthusiasm, passion, motivation. You're really, really excited by your work. You're very productive, you take on every possible task, and you relish the opportunity to perform your best. You feel creative, optimistic, and full of energy, which sounds fantastic. This is why this is called the honeymoon period, right? However, the risk in this stage is that you end up taking on too much work and you overstretch yourself. So it's really important if you're in the honeymoon phase right now that you take some time to make sure that you are resting, recovering properly from your work, and adopt really healthy and robust problem coping strategies as well. If you don't adopt these kind of stress reduction strategies, or if you don't get enough rest, then the risk is that you move on to the second stage. Stage 2 of burnout is the onset of stress stage. So this is when you might start noticing that some days are more stressful than others. And this stage is characterized by 3 things in particular that you need to be aware of. The first thing is lack of time for personal needs. The second, seeing your friends and family less. Third is feeling that your job is the most important thing in your life. In this stage, you will not be prioritizing your own health and well-being. So if you had a camera crew following you around in this stage, what they might notice in terms of your behavior is that you might be spending longer at work. You might be taking longer to do your tasks. You might not be socializing so much with your colleagues, might not be attending meetings, that sort of thing. You won't be socializing outside of work. So because you're spending longer at work, committing yourself more to your work, then there's less time for socializing and for hobbies. It's just about prioritization. This is when your job really starts to take over your life, but at the same time, you're also feeling really stressed. In this stage, you're likely to notice the onset of some physical symptoms. So things like headaches, stomach aches, or muscular pains, and you might also notice some emotional or mental symptoms. So things like difficulty focusing or concentrating. At this stage, you're not likely to recognize this as a problem or as a potential step into burnout either. Remember when I said that your friends and family will start to notice the signs of burnout in yourself before you do? So in this stage, because you're seeing your friends and family less and because you're committing yourself more to work, then people might start to pick up on the changes in yourself. The third stage of burnout is chronic stress, and this is when your stress and your bad days become much more frequent and more constant. So in this stage, your problem solving and coping skills diminish even further, and you start to feel out of control and powerless. Your productivity decreases, and you might find yourself procrastinating as you experience overwhelm. You might well start to feel like you're not performing very well at your job, and then this leads into a sense of failure, guilt, and shame. And the thing about burnout as well is that quite often people turn to maladaptive coping strategies. So when you start to feel like you're not performing very well, quite often we tend to blame ourselves. We might then end up taking on more work, spending longer at work. It becomes a very, very vicious cycle of overwork, failure. It's really, really difficult to get out of. And this level of chronic stress will take its toll on your body and your mind as well. And what you'll find is that the symptoms that you started to experience in stage 2 of burnout now become much more significant. Burnout causes chronic activation of stress hormones, and what these stress hormones do over time is they dampen down your immune system, so you have reduced immunity, you're more likely to pick up coughs, colds, all of that sort of thing. Additionally, you might find that you're not able to regulate your emotions as well anymore. So you might find yourself, for instance, flying off the handle over things that normally you would be able to take in your stride. Even small things might make you turn aggressive, resentful, angry, or sad. Things that you could previously manage, you're now not able to cope. This is a really, really key step in the development of burnout. That emotional dysregulation is a real hallmark of burnout. However, despite the fact that things are getting worse, in this stage you are still in denial, and you'll continue to distance yourself from your colleagues, from your friends, and your loved ones. In extreme cases, in order to try to cope with these negative emotions, some people do end up turning to substances such as alcohol or drugs to try to cope with what's happening. Stage 4 of burnout is burnout itself, and this is where you reach critical exhaustion levels that make it really, really hard to carry on at work and in your home life as well. The continuous sense of failure and powerlessness eventually leads to feelings of despair and disillusionment. You can't see a way out of your circumstances, and you start to become indifferent towards your work, and this is the development of cynicism and apathy. Apathy is the key emotion of this particular stage of burnout. And this sense of apathy and cynicism is referred to as depersonalization, and it is one of the 3 core features of burnout syndrome itself. Those 3 core features are, firstly, emotional exhaustion, so that's the fatigue of caring for too much for too long. Generally, this is the first component of burnout that people recognize in themselves. The second component is depersonalization, so that's the cynicism, the apathy that comes with burnout. And the third component is reduced performance at work in whatever form that takes for yourself. So without all 3 core symptoms, technically you don't have burnout, but you could be on the way to burnout. And as I said, emotional exhaustion is the first thing that most people notice. In the 4th stage of burnout, you will notice that your symptoms become very, very significant, and in particular the physical symptoms. Fatigue will become incredibly overwhelming and disproportionate to how much sleep you're getting. You'll also have developed a profound sense of self-doubt, and you'll also have a very, very pessimistic outlook on your job and your life in general. Stage 5 of burnout is habitual burnout, and this is the stage where you are most likely to need outside intervention to help you to recover. Attempts to bring yourself back to normal in this stage are very, very challenging and feel, well, impossible. And apart from affecting your career, it's going to be pervasive. It's going to affect every aspect of your life by now. You will lose joy in the hobbies that you once loved, and you may not feel like doing anything. In this particular stage of burnout, you are very likely to be experiencing clinical depression. Not everyone with burnout does develop depression, but if you do, this is the stage really when it tends to develop. The need for intervention is what characterises this particular stage of burnout. And as I said, it is much better to prevent yourself from getting to stages 4 or 5 in particular, because if you hit those stages, it's a 1 to 3 year recovery period on average. Burnout recovery is slow. It requires significant change at a time when you are incredibly vulnerable and not in the right position to be able to make those changes. It is a tough slog. So if you can stop yourself from getting there in the first place, then you'll be in a much better position to be able to make the changes that you need to before you get to that prolonged recovery period. However, if you do identify that you're burnt out at the moment, then don't panic. I'm here to help you. So I have a little exercise for you to do right now. Just take some time to reflect on which stage of burnout you think that you're in right now. Then once you've identified the stage that you're at, the question you need to ask yourself is, what is the first and most pressing thing that you need to address? You must get urgent medical attention if you have any of the following symptoms: thoughts of self-harm or suicide, disabling distress or loss of function, significant self-neglect, panic attacks, nightmares, flashbacks or hypervigilance, intrusive thoughts, significant sleep problems, feeling numb, lost or out of control, dependence on food, alcohol or other numbing substances to cope. If this is you, please stop this video and go and seek urgent attention from your healthcare provider. So for those of you that aren't quite sure if you're burning out at the moment, then I have a quiz that you can do that will help risk stratify your risk of burnout. So the tool I'm going to share with you now is the Burnout Assessment tool, and I'm using the abbreviated version, which consists of 12 questions. I'm going to read the questions out, and what you need to do is give yourself a score between 1 and 5 for every question. 1 means never, 2 means rarely, 3 means sometimes, 4 means often, and 5 means always. 1, I feel mentally exhausted. 2, at the end of the day, I find it hard to recover my energy. 3, I feel physically exhausted. 4, I struggle to find any enthusiasm for work. 5, I have a strong aversion to my job. 6, I'm cynical about what my work means to others. 7, I have trouble staying focused. 8, I have trouble concentrating. 9, I make mistakes because my mind is on other things. 10, I feel unable to control my emotions. 11, I do not recognize myself in how I react emotionally. 12, I may overreact unintentionally. Okay, so those are the questions that you need to ask yourselves. Give yourself a score for every question between 1 to 5, then add everything up and divide by 12 and stick to 2 decimal points. Here's the interpretation. A score between 1 to 2.58 means that you are in the green area, so that's a low risk of burnout. If you score between 2.59 and 3.01, then you are orange/amber risk of burnout, so medium risk. Any score between 3.02 and 5 means that you are red, so that's a very high risk of burnout. If you identify with being in burnout or habitual burnout based on the 5 stages of burnout, or score high or red on the Burnout Assessment tool quiz, then you are experiencing a burnout crisis, and this is what you need to do. Stop. Take sick leave if this is available to you. I know that not everyone has the ability to take sick leave. If this is not you, then don't panic, because actually you can still recover, but if it is available to you, you must take it. Then you need to get expert help. You need to speak to your doctor or a therapist as soon as you can, and you must seek urgent or same-day attention if you are experiencing any thoughts of self-harm or suicide. Then give yourself a metaphorical hug, show yourself some compassion, and retreat to somewhere safe physically and psychologically. I will be sharing a lot more from my journey with burnout recovery here on this channel. So if you do identify with being burnt out right now, then I will be here to guide you through that recovery process and tell you everything that you need to know. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, which is @The Burnout Doctor. Take care.